Hello, I'm Sanya from Atmosly. This video will demonstrate how to make an AWS cluster on Atmosly in 3 easy steps. Step 1. Click on the cluster module and navigate to the Add Cluster button on the top right corner of the screen. Step 2. Fill in the basic details for your cluster. Add a display name. For this video, I will put dev cluster. Select your target account. The records displayed here are the AWS accounts you have integrated with the platform from the integrations module. We have one already integrated, so we'll use that one. Select the region where you want the cluster to be deployed. I will select US East 1. Atmosly performs a few prerequisite checks, for example, checking the VPC limit, the EIP quota, regions, and the availability zones to make sure that the cluster creation process is successful. And next, I'll select what is the type of environment I'll be deploying on the cluster. Based on whether it is prod or non-prod, Atmosly takes a few settings mandatory. For example, in case of prod cluster, logging would be mandatory. But in the case of non-prod cluster, logging is non-mandatory. I'm going to go for non-prod cluster here. Select the availability zones. Select the Kubernetes version. I will not change the VPC CIDR settings. I will add a tag. Save and next. Step 3 is selecting the add-ons you want deployed on the cluster. For example, if you want monitoring for your cluster, you can enable PGL stack and configure it. Similarly, you can have a network load balancer and application load balancer for routing purposes. Preview. In the preview screen, you will see a total estimated cost on the top right corner. This cost is the cost of your cluster before the deployment happens. This is an estimated cost to tell the user that approximately you will be spending so and so amount of money every month for this cluster based on the configuration settings and the add-ons that you have selected while creating the cluster. Once you have reviewed this, simply click on Create. It's important to note that all logs are stored in the user's bucket and Atmosly only uses metadata. Once created, your cluster will look something like this, where you'll be able to see basic details, update history, and the add-ons configuration that you selected while deploying the cluster. For example, for PGL stack, you will see the endpoint. You can navigate to the endpoint to open Grafana and use the username and password as mentioned here to log in. Similarly, you can create your node groups. Atmosly creates a few node groups by default. You can also create your own Carpenter managed or AWS managed node group, and you can also deploy your Helm charts through the marketplace.